Korean leader Kim Jong Un and a group of South Korean diplomats dined for 4 hours on Monday night, emerging with a possible peace deal to stop the North's nuclear weapon and missile programs. South Korean officials said the isolated nation may even be willing to abandon its nuclear weapons program in exchange for security guarantees from the U.S., according to the New York Times. President Donald Trump claimed he was behind the potential diplomatic opening, given his administration's deep-cutting economic sanctions against North Korea. Yet North Korea has a checkered history of adhering to nuclear treaties, and the proposal may exploit Trump's ire toward Kim, not to mention his administration's rigid diplomatic stance toward North Korea. People are saying they promised to stop nuclear tests and missile tests. Jeffrey Lewis, a nuclear policy expert at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, told Business Insider. What I saw was that they promised to stop those tests while they were negotiating with the United States. To Lewis, who also publishes Arms Control Wong, a requirement for direct U.S. involvement in talks sounds less like a promise to stop and more like a permission slip to continue testing. What's more, he added, Kim's proposal is poised to significantly weaken economic sanctions that the Trump administration has leveraged against North Korea. How the offer could help North Korea and undermine U.S. interests. Trump has not been shy about his disdain for Kim, often calling the leader Little Rocket Man and threatening him with the size of Trump's nuclear button. Trump has also flipped back and forth between rejecting negotiations with North Korea outright to, less frequently, expressing optimism about the possibility, should the nation be open to ridding itself of all intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear warheads, and reactors. North Korea's ICBMs are now thought to have the ability to strike U.S. targets. Lewis said the Trump administration's sanctions were indeed painful to North Korea. But he noted that Kim was probably most concerned about ending joint military exercises around the Korean peninsula between U.S. forces and their allies, such as South Korea and Japan. Such activity heightens tensions and could lead to catastrophic miscalculations, Lewis previously told Business Insider. They've always wanted those military exercises shut off because military exercise is how real wars start. That's the cover that everybody gives for amassing troops, Lewis said. So basically they have to go on alert every time we do them. And we used to do them during the harvest, which was not nice. Offering a peace deal could motivate South Korea to stall or cancel the next joint military exercise, which is scheduled for the spring. From a North Korean perspective, they'd like to get the cancellation of the exercises. But this also helps them manage their sanctions problem, Lewis added. If they're seen as saying, look, we're willing to stop the missile tests just as soon as the U.S. shows up, but then the U.S. doesn't show up, then it's a potentially big win for Kim. All eyes on the Trump administration refusing to sit down with North Korea is a strong possibility, given the Trump administration's frequent and stern messaging about negotiating with the country. Officials recently enacted more sanctions against North Korea over the assassination of Kim Jong Un, who was Kim's half-brother and possibly an heir to his position. But acting tough against Kim's offer, or simply ignoring it, could backfire. If they then do another missile test, how does the sanctions fight play out? Lewis said. The South Koreans and the Russians and the Chinese all refuse to back more sanctions because they'll say, well, there's a standing offer from the North Koreans that you're not taking. At the end of the day, what they're really looking at doing is countering the U.S. campaign of pressure. China and Russia might also spin a lack of U.S. talks to weaken or ignore existing sanctions, since those countries don't really owe us any favors, Lewis said. Even South Korea may join them as it pushes for an opportunity to make peace with its adversarial neighbor. This is generally how the sanctions game is played, and it's just that the Trump administration is really bad at it, Lewis said. The whole point of sanctions is to get pressure on another country to do something. He added, you can't really convince other countries to go along with you unless you are seen as being reasonable, unless you're being seen as willing to take the sanctions off in exchange for good behavior, unless you are seen as trying to reach a diplomatic settlement. Trump's appointees, such as Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Secretary of Defense James Mattis, generally say the right words to keep the door open to possible negotiations with North Korea, Lewis said, but Trump often undermines their statements with his own. Lewis said, however, that the president's statements on Tuesday were fine for Trump. Regardless, North Korea seems to have thrown a large diplomatic ball into Trump's court, and the world is waiting to see how the U.S. responds. The stakes are high, given the Trump administration push to expand America's nuclear weapons arsenal, and as U.S. military forces train to face a conflict on the Korean peninsula. This story was updated with new information.